On August 24th, 2025, the people of Kim, Colorado gathered to engage in conversation and record their oral histories so they could be shared for generations to come. These are their stories, their family histories, and their memories.
Like many of you here recently, we've been to a lot of them funerals, and we're losing this history just every day. And both these ladies have been after me to do something like this so that they can get an introduction out here to this end of our county. And this lady to my right here, this is Maggie Ferrendelli. She's with History Colorado, and the other lady is Melissa Bade. And Melissa is with the Spanish Peaks Outdoor Coalition. What we're hoping will happen here today is that we'll get a lot of good stories and a lot of history that's happened in this community before it's gone. We want to get it all on videotape. Hopefully you signed up over here if you're going to be speaking, and put your email and your address down there, because the only thing I wanted out of this, these girls asked me, is that everybody that does that interview will get at least one of those memory sticks, and that way you can share that with your families. All right, let's, John Maroney, would you come up here, please? I'm going to have John say grace. Thank you.
You bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, we're so thankful for this day. Thankful for the opportunity together, hear stories of the past, plan for the future. All things we know are created by you, and to you we owe all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, so we're really just here to hear your stories and capture the history of this part of Los Animas County and Colorado. So I just want to say thank you all for being here. As I mentioned, my name is Melissa Bade. I'll be kind of moderating the conversation today, but I don't want to interject too much. I really want to hear from you all. I know some of you have prepared some things to say, so I'm just going to open it up kind of generally, and then I have a couple guided questions after you each have an opportunity to kind of tell us who you are, your connection to Kim in Los Animas County in this beautiful area of the state. So we'll open it up broadly, and then I've got a couple targeted questions kind of about what you've learned and what you want to pass down to the next generation. So with that, maybe I could just ask each of you to share your name, where you're from, and a little bit about your life here in Los Animas County, in the Kim area, and a little bit about that history. So maybe we'll just take a few minutes for each person to kind of introduce themselves that way, and then we can dive into some of these questions. So Everett, I might start with you, and then we'll work our way around the circle.
Okay, I come here in 1940 with my folks, and they moved about 10 miles south or northwest of Kim, and that's where I was raised, right at the head of Smith Canyon. And then I went to school here at Kim. Well, at first I went to first grade was Goodwill School, and then my second grade was started at Kim. And I done all 12 grades here at Kim, for the rest of them, and graduated in '58. And anyway, then I started ranch. I decided to want a ranch. I tried college, and I come back and told Dad I want a ranch. And so he said, you better get started if you're going to ranch. He said, it's going to take a lifetime. And he was right. But anyway, then I married Flo, my wife, and then we had 3 kids. And anyway, I've had a good life.
That's great.
Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at now. So
Wonderful. Awesome. Thanks, Everett, for being here. We really appreciate it. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
John Maroney, Kim, Colorado. I came out to this country. I was about 11 years old. My mom was born out here, and I stayed with relatives and neighbors and got myself through high school, and married a little old gal from the Canyon Country. We've been together 59 years, and we ranch and enjoy every minute of it. Cattle are good price this year, and if the market will hold, why, we'll make enough to buy feed for next year. But all I know about what we're wanting to talk about is that I was fortunate enough to live with senior citizens in my young day, and they'd been through the Depression, and they'd been through the wars and everything, and a lot of the comments that I'll make is from so-called hearsay, but it's from honest, good, hard-working people, and we'll see how it goes.
Thanks for being here, John. Caroline.
Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Kibler. My grandson helped write this up, so I was born on August the 13th in 1941 in Lahaina, Colorado, to my mother Norma Smart and father Wayne Smart. I've been a native of the Arkansas River Valley most of my life. I currently reside in Lahaina at 118 Dalton. Spent most of my childhood years on a ranch near Kim, Colorado. I'm the wife of my late husband, Marvin Kibler. Marvin and I were blessed with a beautiful daughter, Twyla. Twyla loved horses from a very young age and had rodeos most of her younger years. She won many trophies, also many rodeo queen contests, numerous rodeos. Her favorite was the kids' rodeo in Lahaina. Twyla loved horse racing, especially when she could run it against Kent Wagner, the 3-horse relay. Twyla went to be with the Lord at a young age of 48 in the year of 2007. There is definitely no pain that compares to the loss of your child. Marvin and I spent 67 wonderful years together until his recent passing in March. He was a loving, caring, devoted husband who I miss so much every day. I have a single grandson. He and his wife have blessed me with 2 beautiful great-grandchildren who I cherish more than anything in the world. In the year 1926, when my grandparents Carl and Grace Smart claimed acres of land within Los Animas County, later increased numerous more acres during construction of their homestead. My grandfather actually lived in a cave on the property during all of this construction. Today, you would recognize their address as 9 of you. My grandparents birthed and raised 6 children, one of which was my father, Wayne. He and my mother later gave birth and raised 7 children, including myself. Our early educational experience was spent within the Johnny Valley Schoolhouse, which was built in the area of the ranch. We attended class with some of our cousins, the Blondells, as well as other students from surrounding areas under the instruction of several teachers, including Mr. Dillon and Mrs. Carol Jones. God bless their souls for what they put up with us. A fence around the schoolhouse was built by my dad and provided a place for us kids to put our horses when we rode them to school. We put the saddles in the outhouse to keep them dry from the rain and snow. Speaking of horses, we used to have an area on the ranch where they held some rodeos. My dad would come out of the chutes on a bareback horse with just a mane hold. Around 1950, they closed the Johnny Valley Schoolhouse. From this point, us kids were bused to school in Kim, Colorado. I'll never forget one day when we were riding the bus home from school, and the driver suddenly came to an abrupt stop. It was then we discovered a car that had veered off a sharp turn in the road, unfortunately killing the person inside. Us kids never forgot this day and have since referred to this curve as Dead Man's Curve. In 1965, there were 2 creeks on the ranch, Shell Creek and Johnny Creek. When we got the flood in 1965, both creeks ran together and created a large head of water. It proceeded to flow downstream, and in the flood, my Aunt Mamie Blondell was drowned. Our ranch was fortunate to have 2 natural springs with ponds. We constructed several windmills there to provide plenty of water for the livestock. However, this fortune did have consequences. One day around the year 1950, our mother went out to collect water from the spring. They had built a cover over it with a door. While collecting water, my mom was struck on the top of her head by a rattlesnake that was resting on the roof of the spring. When she didn't come back in, I decided to investigate. Time seemed to stand still as I found her on the ground. I ran and got my dad. He put Mom and us kids in the car, and we headed to the Los Animas hospital. We stopped by our grandparents on the way, and Grandpa gave my mom a tablespoon of powdered aloe. The doctor later told us that this was probably what saved her life, because it reduced her blood flow. I remember us kids sitting in the back seat and praying all the way down. We were praying, God, please don't take her, Mom. This is why I still definitely believe in prayers. My husband and Martin and I love to hunt arrowheads on the ranch. The area is rich with Native American history. Over the years, my husband and I have collected and added over 1,500 pieces of Native American artifacts to our collection, including manos and mataris, in addition to the arrowheads. One of the visits to the ranch, my niece also discovered a metal arrowhead, and I found an arrowhead shaft straightener. My grandson has also made running trips to the ranch with us. When he was 6 years old, my friend and Ryan's elementary school teacher, Jim Harrell, encouraged a dinosaur paleontologist to visit the ranch. His name was Dr. Robert Bade. He was a leading paleontologist at the time, even serving as a consultant for the movie Jurassic Park. And my grandson didn't put that in there, but he was starred in that movie. While on the ranch, Dr. Bacher discovered a huge fragment of an upper left femur of
You got me.
Apatosaurus dinosaur. He told us that this was the same huge plant-eating, long-necked dinosaur that made many of the prints that we see over at the dinosaur tracks. These fossils were later placed on display at the Colorado State Fairgrounds. My grandparents and dad ran numerous cattle and horses on the ranch. I'll never forget the beautiful black horse they maintained on the ranch was sold years later. When I was younger, my dad gave me that black mare who liked to buck me off every time I rode her. She bucked so well that we decided to have a friend buck her out of the chutes at a rodeo. It was there that a stock contractor decided to buy her. She performed alongside a string of horses for years at different rodeos. To me, our ranch was the most beautiful ranch. The way it set in the canyons created beautiful sunsets that I'll never forget. We were blessed with years of ample water and nice rains. We had wonderful neighbors, including the Mackeys, the Barbers, the Palmers, the Platts, and the Blondells. We enjoyed our times together spent in the ranch homes made of rock. But what I disliked the most about growing up on the ranch was all of the dirt roads. Even the road from Kim, Colorado to La Junta was dirt for many years. I want to thank all of you so much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my cherished memories.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story. It's beautiful. Sue.
Yes. I have the pleasure of talking today about my husband's grandmother, Rosalie Anna Jones Mahoney. And I'm like John, I was lucky to marry into the family 59 years ago. Grandma Mahoney moved here she was born in Noda-Sloga, Alabama. And she traveled out here with her mother and 5 sisters from Hobart, Oklahoma, and she drove a covered wagon, and Anophelia drove the other wagon. And her family claimed and settled near Andrix. And in this time, she met a gentleman, Claude Lafayette Mahoney, And he was from Higgins Gentry, Missouri. And on June the 2nd of 1917, Grandma Mahoney and Grandpa Mahoney decided to get married. Well, that was a Saturday. So they drove to the county seat in Los Animas County, which is in Trinidad. And they had to find someone to open up the courthouse. Can you imagine trying to find somebody today to open up a courthouse on a Saturday? And they got a marriage license. Well, then they had to find a minister to marry them. And on the marriage certificate that hung in their home was the name of the pastor that married him. And his name was Waggoner, Waggoner. Well, they had driven into Trinidad to get supplies also. And she always referred to Grandpa Mahoney's dad as Claude's daddy. And I never knew his name till just a while ago, and it was Robert. And she said it was Claude's daddy, Claude, me, and she had been living with an old maid school teacher named Delphi. So they found this minister, Waggoner, and he married him. They went to the mercantile and got their supplies, started back to Kim. Well, it got dark. So they decided to camp by the side of the road. So they unloaded their flatbed truck, and they made biscuits and coffee, and that's what they had for supper. And so her wedding night was spent on the back of that flatbed truck, and she said it was Claude's daddy, Claude, me, and Delphi. And then one other story that she shared with Keith and I, it's after, and then in the mix of all that, they moved back to Guthrie, Oklahoma, and Keith's mother, Mildred, was born in Guthrie. And then they moved back here to the Kim area. And Janice will share a picture with you of the dugout that they lived in. But one of the stories that she shared with Keith and I was they had a terrible, terrible snowstorm, terrible wind, snow blowing, and they had to bring the cow into the dugout just so she didn't suffocate. So she was a delightful woman. She lived to be 101 years old. Wow. And Keith and I had the privilege of having lunch with her every day because I worked in La Junta, he worked in Rocky Ford, and I had lunch with her every day, 5 days a week. But Keith is an avid Lions Club member, so I can't die, and I can't be buried on Wednesday because he does not miss Lions Club. So we miss her so very much. She had so much wisdom and such a strong faith. And when trouble would come by, she told me one time, she said, "Sue, you just have to stay strong. And you have to grab a hold of it and deal with it, but life goes on." So.
Very good. Thank you, Sue.
Did you want us
I guess I want to tag on, Sue, to what you said at the end, and maybe just ask, speaking of wisdom, if you could pass down any life lesson that you've learned, any nugget of wisdom that you've learned from your families, from generations before you, from your teachers, what would it be and why?
to always treat other people the way you'd like to be treated?
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Tell me more about that.
Pardon?
Tell me more.
I don't know, I just...
It's important,
yeah.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just always be kind.
Always be kind. What else?
If it don't rain, it won't grow. I think we all understand that. And just some of the stories that I kept in my head from the time I was living with these older people that went through the 20s and 30s and so forth. I asked the question one time about the government pastors, how'd they come by. And they said, well, the Homestead Act, homesteaders came in from everywhere and filed on the country, and it wasn't long till dry weather and hard times came, and as they left, the government would acquire their property and put it together. If you go in a lot of these government pastures and look around, there's old homesteads and such that was filed on, that the government took majority of it, and that's where we get our government pastures today, is really from the homesteaders. And the other thing was they didn't have means to do a lot of things other than horseback, and they told stories about wrapping their legs and feet in gunny sacks, and gunny sack over their head, 2 eyes and a mouth hole, and getting on a horse and riding 10 miles to get help or get groceries or go to the doctor or whatever they had to do.
I have to agree with him about putting gunny sacks on your feet, because growing up, there was many times us kids didn't have overshoes, and they would wrap our feet in gunny sacks to keep the shoes dry and warm. That's a very true story.
And back then, they used a cake string. They laced them with we called it a cake string. It was a cotton string, and we would use actually we'd tie them on our feet, and then we'd lace them up to keep them on all day. And, but I wasn't too old. I frostbit the kids in my legs riding a horse.
Oh, wow.
But I guess one of the most impressive things to me was how they got by with little or nothing. I mean, they shot deer. There wasn't no seasons. It was just open game, and fed their families, and they worked. Many of them that had either was lucky enough to have a spring or a windmill, others hauled water wagons and stuff. And I look at us today and I just marvel at thinking the generations that we're in, I'm in, I don't know if you made it. Those people were tough, and I always respected the guys that farmed early. I asked one of the fellows I was living with, I said, why'd this country get broke out so bad? And said, well, they had the Homestead Act, and people come in and you had to farm so much. And he said the first year or two they had it, said the moisture was perfect and they raised good crops. And he said, man, everybody said this is the farmingest country you ever seen, so they broke it out. And it wasn't long in the late 20s and 30s, here came the Dust Bowl, forced a lot of them off their places and left. And they were true pioneers. We could all do what we can do today, but we don't hold a candle to what they went through. I marvel at them. I give them all the credit in the world, and I was proud to be able to know some of them. And I asked about the government land, and they said that the people homesteaded and had government loans, and they couldn't make it. So the government took the land back, and now we've got large accumulation of pastures that's federally owned that are leased out for grazing here in this country. But the marvel, I guess, to me is how tough the people were. They had a little, got by with little, raised big families, and true pioneers. This whole country was tough and hard. Today we get a drought on, and we think we're up against it, but we haven't had a 7 to 10 year drought in quite a while, and hope we never do. But I admire our senior citizens, our older folks that are gone. They were true pioneers and hard workers. Thank you.
In 1943, I think, 42, they come and talked to all the landowners in our area anyway, or this is my understanding. And I don't remember doing it, but I can remember. And what they was is going to make a target deal for the Army. And so they said when they flew over the plains, they'd be shooting to the north, to get behind something. And I can remember when my dad got to milk cow one morning. These planes flew over, and man, he looked up at them and he said, you boys watch them plane. And we did, and directly he said, you boys get around behind the grain bin. It was a rock grain bin. And he got with us. And we could hear him shooting south. And pretty soon we heard bullets coming right over the top of the grain bin. And we could hear them. And that was 50 calibers. And I picked up a shell here just the other day. And I picked them up too.
Yeah, we picked them up on our ranch also, the shells. You can hear them flying over.
And as far as I know, no ranchers ever shot down a plane. I think they thought about it a time or two, though. But like Dad said, we got to sacrifice something because it's a war. And all them shells, they have on the back of them, it's got the dates, 42, 43, 44. I don't know, maybe not 44, but 43s I know. On the back of the shells, 50 caliber shells. And maybe some people moved. We had the Moors, they moved out of the canyon because it got so bad. And they was in a log house. And they moved out on top to the rock house on my dad's place. Then they left before it was over with. They just got too scary for them.
Caroline, I think you brought some photographs of things that you found on your property to share.
Do you want me to just hold them up?
Yeah, I think just hold, Jeff, right? Just hold it up to the camera, I think.
This is some arrowheads that Marvin and I framed that we found on the ranch over the years. There was, we have collected over 1,500 arrowheads, and any of you are welcome to stop by our home, and we have them in our family room and see them. Some of them I can remember exactly the day and the place I found them. I don't know if I should say.
Yeah, sure, a special one.
My mother was passing away with cancer, and I was having a hard time. And she said, you go to the ranch and you spend the afternoon hunting arrowheads, because I know that helps relax you. And I found that out in front of the place where my mom and dad had lived when my oldest sister was born. And I took it back to the hospital. And that was the last thing I gave her before she passed away the next day. And then this is some more of them. And then one of my nieces found a metal one. I let her have it and she lost it. But then I found an arrow shaft straightener. I don't know if any of you would know what that is. It's a piece of sand rock, and it was about that long. And when it was turned over, it looked rounded. And so I reached down and picked it up because I thought, gee, that looks different. And when I turned it over, I said to Marvin, look, what is this? And it's where they would run the arrow through the sand rock to shape it and help straighten it, and then put there on the end. So that's very rare to find that also. And that's some of the other, that they put on their necklaces. And then this bunch of arrowheads was all found in one spot. They were like kind of buried, and the bigger one was laying on the top. And when we pulled it up, there was these other arrowheads we found there. Marvin called it a cache or something.
The cache.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I want to hear about traditions a little bit. Tell me about what traditions you have that you hope continue. Share your favorite, and I'd love to hear from everyone. What are some of your favorite traditions?
Well, I was a secretary at West Elementary School, and I love my job, and I love the kids, and I love the teachers, and I'd be happy if any of my grandchildren did that.
Yeah. What else? John, did you have a tradition in mind?
I don't know. I guess it's just a deal. You get used to it and take it for granted, but a lot of times city folks don't realize that it's a little bit of hardship living out here. We love it. That's why we live here. Nowadays, it's pretty easy. Jump in the car in an hour, you're in Ohana or Trinidad, and you can do your shopping and get back home. But it wasn't always that way. It took a long while to get there. Highway 109's paved. You can just zip right along. It never used to be paved. And 160 for the biggest part. Started started out at Trinidad and then finally got paved through Chippewa. Eventually made it to Kim and then finally on east. But I can remember coming down when it was gravel and Chippewa could drift in with snow about 20 foot deep. And it's just different. I hope the kids, it's hard for them to realize if they haven't been through it what all old timers' hardships were. And they had plenty, but they made do. And I admired them. They all had big families, and it's a good thing they did, or this community wouldn't be here right now. But super people, super characters, and we had a snowstorm several years ago, 73, and it was bad, lots of deep snow. And I took a weasel and was delivering groceries to people out in the country, a wormy weasel. So I was going to a place on the corner out here, it's called Stone Brothers lived there. They were two old bachelor brothers. And so I knew I was going there, so I made a special effort to get a case of beer. And I got out there in that weasel and grabbed the case of beer and stepped out. The snow was 4 or 5 foot deep. And just as I got to where I could see the door of the house, so it opened up, and old Lyle Stone was there. He's an old fellow. He looked out and he says, "Good Lord, Santa Claus, me and you the only ones left alive." But people were tough. Those Stone boys lived right there on that little place and had a few cows and did well. And I think my biggest admiration for the early settlers was their grit. They had no other way but to do the best they could, haul their water, chop their own wood, do stuff now that we take for granted. So I feel fortunate to have known a lot of the older generation and have the utmost respect for them. Good people.
Yeah. My grandson was very young when he found the dinosaur bones and stuff. And I was so proud of him because he told me he wanted a polisher. So I bought him a stone polisher. His mother put it in the house and she said, "You come get that thing, it's driving me nuts." But he polished them and made me a pendant and a necklace and some earrings out of his dinosaur collection.
Very nice.
Sweet. What other traditions or cultural events that you want to see continued?
Yeah, my dad, his homestead down there in New Mexico, it was just one room, and that was where it was when he married my mother, and he rode from his homestead down there by Kenton to Hardesty on horseback to see my mother. And I think it took him 3 days to get there. But he had some cousins there, and he stayed with them, and then eventually they decided to get married. So he brought her back to New Mexico, and then in 1940 they moved up here. And but he was 17 when he moved to New Mexico. He brought a team in a wagon, and a milk cow and a calf was in the wagon, and he had some saddle horses back behind. And he brought them from Hardesty, Oklahoma, to down there by Kenton, and on up the valley. There, and he was 17 myself. And he said he had to leave the cow in there. He had to haul water to her and get her feed every day. And, but they needed that milk cow. And he said that most of the cattle that originally started here was with Jerseys. So everybody brought a Jersey cow, and that was for milk, is what they had. And so he said the basic herd was, when they first started, was Jerseys here in this country. And he said it took them a while to get better types of cattle. Then they got the Hereford, and they thought that was the one. Now it's Angus. But anyway, it's changed over time.
Yeah.
But like John said, they had it tough. When he first owned his homestead, he had a little dugout with just some posts over the top of it. And that's where he stayed. till he got his house built. And it was just a one-room rock house. And then people, you know, they complain about not having any place to live or anything, but they won't live in a $200,000 or $300,000 home where it's not right. So anyway, they had it tough. And I remember Carolyn and Marvin, when they first started out, and Marvin dug the basement under your house there, and every day he'd come home from work and he'd do a little work underneath the house. Put a nice basement too.
That's great.
Even with, you know, in the later generations, it was a little tougher, but
Well, and back when I was growing up, I remember I would load my horse from our ranch house to 9 of you to pick up the mail, which back then that seemed like fun, you know, to do that, but it was quite a ways. Ken, about how far do you think it would be from the ranch, he's talking, from our ranch to the post office?
You can interrupt them.
It was quite a ways.
They talk all the time. Carolyn has a question for Ken.
About how far do you think it would be from our ranch house to 9 of you?
Sounds like she's asking how far it would be from the ranch to the post office.
How far do you think it was from our ranch house to 9 of you?
Let's see, it's 4 miles to Larry's, and then it's probably 8 miles.
Yeah.
Could it be about
One way.
4 miles back to you guys' place?
Yeah.
But it was fun. I don't know, I'd recommend it.
Yeah. That's great. We have just a few minutes left. Maybe 2 more questions. So my first question for you all is, I've heard a little bit about stories, whether it's from your parents, your grandparents, stories from your experiences, but is there a wild story or a funny story or a crazy story that you want to share with everyone? And maybe we'll just see if each person has maybe one story to share, and then I'll wrap up with one final question.
Well, a sad but true story. 1973, we had blizzards hit in the spring time, and for some unreal reason, they closed out Interstate 25, so the people got to Trinidad and said, well, we got to go to Oklahoma or we got to go to Kansas. Which way do we go? And they said, just go down 160. Well, a major blizzard on. This little old town, pretty small, but we wound up with, one night there was over 300 people stranded in Kim. And people took them in, and the churches were full, and got them fed and kept them going till the highway department could blow the roads open with a snow blower and get them on their way. But always told people, if a major highway like 50, I-25 is closed, do not take a secondary road. It's just not good sense. But all in all, if I had to live anywhere else, I don't think I'd get along with anybody, but all these guys are good friends.
I guess mine would be, this was not her school teacher, Mrs. Carol Jones. She was married to Noble Jones. Anyway, he flew up to bring her, and she said that day he asked her to marry him. And then she wrote it out as kids. But anyway, I was telling Don Marie, and Don Marie said, tell that, but every April Fool's Day, all of us would leave home with a sack lunch, but we didn't go to school. We went and played and climbed on the hills. But she got to where she knew anyway, so.
Sue, do you have a story?
I'll just add about Grandma and Grandpa. They were married 63 years when he passed away. They had 7 children. They had lots of nieces and nephews. They had 26 grandchildren, 56 great-grandchildren, and 25 great-great-grandchildren.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing. Beautiful. What about you, Everett? Any good stories to share?
Okay, I'm trying to. There's several of them. I don't know if I'll repeat them or not.
It's okay, they can stay secret.
Anyway, yeah, we had a woman get a hold of us here several years ago. And she lost an uncle in 1970. Her great uncle, I'm not sure which now. And anyway, when he was killed in our East Pasture in 1917. And so I went, she was wanting more information. She said, the law said that thought cattle rustlers had killed him. Well, anyway, I went to talk to some of the old neighbors, and Earl Moore said that, well, they said they found him. He was shot, and somebody covered him up with tumbleweeds off from Little Canyon. There's a spring there. And so they found him, and so I asked Raymond Freaky about it. Yeah, he said, I think my cousin killed him. And, well, what do you think of that? He said, he left here right after that and said, we never did see him again. I said, well, maybe they killed him too. No, he said, I don't think so. Said he was scared to come back, scared the neighbors would kill him. And that was kind of the way it was in 17.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people killed in this area. And actually, he was on the draft board. The old man was on the draft board, and he was a Spanish-American soldier. But he was on the draft board, and this was the young guy that killed him. And then also, the guy down here on the Macy that General Shannon's ran the post office there, he was killed at the same time, and he was on the draft board. And whoever they come off the Macy and shot him one morning, and went back up on the Macy, and they headed east. And that was not the same time. And that's, so I'm not, that's just one of the stories that we don't know anything other than it happened.
I guess in my conclusion, all I would say is that granddaughter's correct. She says, Papa, I know why you and Grandma live in Kim. And I said, why is that? She said, it's simple. I said, yeah, we ain't moving.
Yeah, that keeps it kind of simple, don't it?
Well, my final question to wrap this group up is just who would you, let me see how we frame it in our questions here. If you could thank anyone throughout your whole life, you could say thank you to anyone, who would it be and why?
My wife, the fifth.
Not just because she's here. Why is that?
She's a good one. She's been with me for 59 years, and that's one long time to live with me.
You'd have had to know John in high school to appreciate what she's made of.
She raised
Come a long way.
great kids and got some great grandkids. And she's the reason we're together and everything's working out. So proud to have you, Ma.
That's very sweet.
I think I followed right along with John on that. I've been real fortunate.
Yeah?
And we've got good wife, good kids, and couldn't ask for more.
Good wife and good kids. Couldn't ask for more. I love that.
Mine would have to be my husband, Marvin, who's deceased, and my grandmother, Carl Smart.
Tell us why.
Pardon?
Tell us why. Do you have a reason?
Marvin was just the kindest man, and always thought of his family and everyone. And my grandfather was a lot the same way.
Yeah.
I just really respected both of them.
Absolutely. Good examples to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sue, what about you? Who would you thank?
Well, Janet and I share something. She was born, when is your birthday? 24th of November. I was born December the 1st. But my mother, Mary Malott, shared a room with Stella Harrington when we were born. And I'm not sure why Janet couldn't go home. I don't know whether it's the weather or what. Yeah. And it's kind of come full circle. My nephew Jim is married to Sharon Baroni. So, yeah. So we're family.
That's cool. What a great story that you shared shared the same
Yeah,
same room when you were born.
Kim country, you don't talk about anybody because somebody's related. Just shake hands and wave and go right on.
Well, I won't make you gossip anymore. Don't want to get you in trouble, but I want to say thank you for sharing your stories and all of the special artifacts that you have and beautiful people in your lives with us. I think it's really special to capture. And so any final thoughts from anyone before we go to our second group of folks?
No, we done said too much.
All right, time to break. Thank you all so much. All right, so we're going to get started with our second group. We switched it up a little bit. We have a family unit here that's going to tell a little bit about their family story. And then we have a couple more folks for our third group that we will get to right after them. But I'm really excited to have a few different generations of a family here to share. So I'm going to turn it to you all to introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, where you're from, and then Tanky, I think you're going to take it away to help us hear some really interesting stories from your family.
My name is Patsy Howard. Patsy Howard Laurie. Patsy Laurie Howard.
There you go.
And I live in Springfield.
Go ahead, Mom.
I am Audrey Lee Rose Lowry.
Where do you live?
I live in Pueblo right now.
Okay. And how old are you?
I'm not telling.
Oh, okay. My name is Tanky Lowry, and I live in Colorado City, Colorado, but raised here in Kim.
My name is Marion Louise Rose Like, and I also was raised here at Kim, Colorado, born in 1932, and married a boy from Kim, Colorado, so have been here a lot, in and out, even during my married years. And now I have 4 generations. So I will be 93 years old this coming week.
Yeah, Tuesday now.
We're saving our happy birthday song for the end.
Okay. All right. It's kind of unique in what we're doing here, is that we have 2 different sides of the family that are represented in me. Is that my last name is Lowry. My father's name was Londell Lowry, which is my Aunt Patsy's brother. And so we'll talk a little bit about the Lowry side. And then this side here are roses. And this is from my mom's side. And she is old. And I am actually 73, for 74. So if that gives you any idea kind of where she's at, then that's good. They are both fantastic as far as their minds are going. And being raised in Kim, they're going to have some stories about the different people and families that were here in Kim, Colorado. But as far as, we'll start with Patsy on the Lowry side. And then if you want to start what you want to say and ask me questions, or I'll ask you.
Well, I was born in Los Animas, Colorado, and my family's ranch was about, it's about 18 miles northeast of here. And I was raised here, and then I married my first husband, Bob Pursley, and then we lived there on the ranch, and then he passed away in '94, and then I married Jim, which is right over there, that good-looking white-haired man. And we've been living there ever since.
Tell us about your dad and mom.
My mother and mother got married when she was 15, and I was telling my niece coming over here that her father passed away in Los Animas because he went up there for a hemorrhoid operation, and when they gave him the anesthetic, which I was... Ether.
And it was in La Junta.
In La Junta.
Yes.
Anyway, and they gave him ether and killed him. I mean, they never even did the operation. And so my grandmother, which lived down by Flues, that's the reason I wanted to bring this picture here. It's where Janice Yoakum lives. It's northeast of her house. And I thought you would like this picture here. Typical of what my parents lived around. That was the place there. And so she got married when she was 15. She basically lived with her husband and her father-in-law, all in a one-room cabin or sod house.
Sod house, yeah.
So she had it rough. My mother had it very rough.
Yeah, my grandfather, her father, was 23 years old. They had never dated. They had seen each other at dances, and his best friend, one of the Frost boys, wasn't it?
I think so.
Was going to be getting married.
I think it was Earl Mayo.
Earl Mayo, you're right. And was going to be getting married and wanted my grandfather to go along with him to Clayton, New Mexico. They could get married in Clayton easier than they could get married in Colorado. Well, my grandfather decided, well, if we're going to go get married, I might as well too. So they went literally to my great-grandmother's place, and he made a deal for my grandmother. They went to Clayton, New Mexico, got married, had their honeymoon there in Clayton. I asked her one time what she thought about her honeymoon, and she said she didn't think much about it. So she said that when they came back, my grandfather had owned one pair of Levi's. He had $15 in his pocket, and he had a place that he was living in with his father in a one-room shack, okay? It was over by the Knightons, if any of you remember the Knighton family that lived over towards Janice and Max's place, and where Hollis and Dola Mitchell lived down in that area there. Anyway, when they came back, they came to the fence, and my grandmother told me this. She said, we came to the gate, and she said, I'm sitting over by him, just 15 years old, and so in love. And she said, he looked at me and he says, what's the matter with you? Is your legs broke? And she said, I knew from that moment on what my life was going to be like. And she did indeed. My grandfather was raised without a mother. His mother died giving birth 6 weeks after giving birth to his little brother. They were originally from Tennessee. The entire family, my great-grandmother, maiden name was Melton, and they had went from Tennessee to Texas, and they worked, believe it or not, if any of you remember the Lonesome Dove series of shows, that ranch, the Borland Ranch, is the ranch that my great-grandfather worked on, and a lot of the Meltons, and I actually have some pictures in my book there of him in the Borland Ranch. When the great-grandmother died, he went back to Tennessee. He then married another woman by the name of Rosa there, and had 2 more sons. And then they were about 3, 4, 5 years old. My grandfather was 7, I think, wasn't he, when they came back to Colorado. He abandoned the wife and the 2 little boys in Tennessee and moved back to Colorado and homesteaded over by the Pritchett line, if any of you know where the Means live or where Patsy's family is. The ranch was homesteaded in 1919. Patsy is still the owner of the ranch, so it makes it over a century that our family has had this ranch. And the original homestead, Patsy and I know where it's at. I don't know that we've ever shared it because we don't want people to tear it up, you know. And so anyway, they came to Colorado, and the Meltons homesteaded in the area over there by Leon Goodrich's wife's name is Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
Leon and Joanne Goodrich.
Leland Goodrich.
Leland Goodrich. Their homesteads were all located in and around that area where they lived. The Grandma Joyce that she's talked about after he died, she came back to the original homestead. She had 5 kids to raise and no way of making a living on 160 acres in Kim, Colorado. So they came up with the idea of let's become bootleggers. And so the family literally were bootleggers and survived through the Depression and everything else. But in addition to doing bootlegging, most of them became alcoholics in the process. My grandmother, she never drank. She had 5 or 6 sisters, and her and one other sister were the only 2 that were not affected by alcohol. And the reason is my grandfather would never allow my 15-year-old grandmother to drink because he didn't think it was proper for a woman to be drinking. So that probably saved her as well as us. We remember several reunions where it got into a drunken brawl with the family members, and my mom and my dad, they would remove us from the environment as children because of the alcohol issue. I did a genealogy research on the family. There's 137 ancestors from that core Joyce group. He originally came from Ireland. And so from him, there's 137. Out of the 137, every single male, except myself and one other male, have died or is affected with alcohol. That's how prevalent that particular gene passed down through the males, is that there's only 2 of the males out of the entire 5 generations that are not alcoholics. Out of them, there's only one female that was an alcoholic, and that was Patsy's aunt, my grandmother Helen's sister. So the Joyces have quite a colorful background on them. And the Lowry then, of course, they came from Tennessee to Texas to Colorado. My grandfather and his brother Leon Lowry, they were raised on the homestead, and Tobe, which was my great-grandfather's name, Tobe Gene Carter Lowry. He would take off and would go and work for a week to 2 weeks to a month and leave those 2 little boys there by themselves. They were 5 and 7, 6 and 8, 7 and 9 years old when this was all going down. So,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, go ahead.
During that time, he would leave. He actually hauled supplies from the Pritchett and that Kim area and everything over to Branson and to Tobe. It's kind of like a truck driver. He would haul supplies different ways back and forth through there.
But was he doing it with horse and wagon?
Yeah. Horse and wagon.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
And that's when he'd leave the little boys there at the cabin by themselves, and they got really ornery.
Yeah. So when it came to knowing how to treat women, neither one of them were trained. They had no examples whatsoever. Now, as a grandfather, sure,
I want to say
go for
something
it,
else.
anytime, but right in.
Okay, one thing Tanky mentioned that the Meltons worked for this Bolin Ranch. If you ever read the book Lonesome Dove,
Yeah.
Larry McGurdy that wrote that book used the personality of one of those Meltons for Gus that's in the book.
Yeah.
So I thought that was always interesting.
Yeah. They all stayed down. The rest of the Meltons, the family is buried down there by Quail, Texas. So, and the great-grandmother as well. So that kind of hits the highlights, I think. I did want to share with you Patsy's aunt. It'd be my great-aunt. Her name was Lois. And she was into family history like I am, quite a bit. And so she drew maps of the area where Patsy grew up and where my grandmother's. And in this, she put all of the old homesteaders that lived in the area. And so, for example, we know where Astor Berry lived, the Van Hooks, a lot of it, where the Tupuse Creek, all of it ties it in together. So I brought an extra set of these, and I thought I would give them to you guys if you want them to take pictures of later. It doesn't matter. So that's kind of that, don't you think? Anything else in the Lowrys? Okay. Going to the other side of my family, my mother's and my Aunt Marion, on this side, their maiden name was Rose. And the Roses came from Tennessee as well. Their grandfather and some of their uncles, great uncles, homesteaded here in Kim, Colorado. Their grandfather's name was Lemuel Rose, Lemuel Rose, and he's buried here at the Kim Cemetery along with his wife Mary. And she was a Shelton that came from Oklahoma, and they homesteaded. When they came here, they had all been in Oklahoma prior to moving to Colorado and had filed their Homestead Act in Oklahoma. So when they came to Colorado to homestead, they actually put the homestead in Mary's name, Lemuel's wife's name, so that they would be able to get a new homestead here. In the 1920s, 30s, I think it's in the 30s, there was a flu epidemic that went through the area. And J.Y. Johnson, where Rick's at now, his grandfather, what was his name, Mom? Do you remember J.Y. Johnson's dad's name?
I wasn't prepared.
Okay, do you remember, Marion?
I don't remember ever hearing it.
You don't remember it?
I will think of it in a few minutes.
Okay, she'll get it too.
If you still want it.
I do. Well, anyway, him and my great-grandfather, Lemuel, were two of the individuals that died from this flu. When Lemuel's brother, his name was Cleland, he lived out by where the Jacksons live, out there. And what is the name of the little community? Where is Mr. Jackson?
Villa Green.
What?
Villa Green.
No, it wasn't Villa Green. Before, anyway, there was a church there, and the cemetery is there.
Around Prairie?
No, it was this side. Anyway. Plum Valley. There's a cemetery out there, and Lemuel's brother Cleland is buried out there. The old Church of Christ building that was located here in Kim originally was the Nazarene Church located at Plum Valley, and then they moved it to Kim. And then when we all went to Church of Christ, we all went to church in that white building, the old wood white building that was over there. So Cleland's funeral was held in the building that we all went to church in, but it was here, not out there. So kind of a neat way of repurposing things.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, Cleland got the flu first. And my great-grandfather sat by him, and the families all came together. There was another sister. I think at one time I counted there was 14 kids and 6 adults in the house. They ran out of food. And so they were giving, Lemuel would go Cleland, when he would wake up, he would just go completely mad, screaming and yelling from the fever if his brother wasn't sitting by him. So their grandfather sat by him for 2 weeks while he died. That was on Saturday. Then on Monday morning, Lemuel got the flu, and they immediately knew how serious all this was, so they took him to La Junta, and he ended up dying 2 days later in La Junta from the flu. So the two brothers died very shortly together. Cleland's wife gave birth in between of their 5th child, between Cleland dying and Lemuel dying. They also had a birth in that time period. So when John was talking about what these people went through in this area, it's unspeakable about what our forefathers did in this area and how they went along with that. Now, these two, you were raised where? What town, or when you were born, where were you born?
I was born in La Junta.
Oh, okay.
Until I was about 3 years old, and then I moved out here for a while. I went to school at Edenview.
Where's Edenview?
It's north, 10 miles north, or a little further.
Of Kim?
Kim.
Okay.
That's it. You know it all.
No, I'm sorry.
So for me,
But we don't.
They don't,
for me to sit
exactly.
here and try to fill in the pieces, he does this for a living.
No, I don't.
He should be getting paid. So he does it. He knows it from one end to the other. And I came totally unprepared for this because I said, no, I'm not going to sit here and tell all of this because I don't even know what they want to hear. And he doesn't care what you want to hear. You're going to hear it anyway.
You see what I had to
And
put up
this is because I live 10 miles north of Kim, and I wound up in Wilsonburg, but this is what come of it. This is what I had.
Oh, you're talking about me?
Me, you.
Oh my gosh. Can you believe her?
So this is why I don't have to sit here. I don't have to sit here and know one thing. I don't know where the Lowrys came from. I don't know where the Roses came from, but I do know where he came from. And I have just about had it. So now then, what do you want him to tell you?
Okay,
And
we're going to make her tell a story.
I will have him tell you.
No, you're going to tell this story.
I don't know it.
Yes, you do. What was the name of, between here and Andrews, there was a woman that lived down
Ella
that...
Colleen. I told you that a week
Ella
ago.
Colleen.
All right, girls, let's hear about Ella Colleen.
Well, you know it.
You don't tell it.
I gave it to you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well,
not gonna
she was a little retired school teacher and looked a lot older than she probably was. But she decided she just wanted to kind of be a hermit. And so she came here and lived this highway that goes on to Springfield. She lived out there somewhere.
She lived in an old car.
In an old car, yes.
And she had a herd of horses between 50 and 300 and 1,000. Wild. And that ran loose out here. Now that's the story of Ella Colleen.
Yeah, and I had been over to see Ella Colleen with my dad several times. And she slept with her pigs and her dogs and her cats and a goat. And slept in a car, winter and all. And this is how she survived and kept warm, she said. She just slept with her babies. She called them her babies. But she was really an animal lover. Very well educated, very smart, but that's the way she elected to live. And so she was quite a different type character and very interesting, and had horses. And back then we didn't have any fences in Colorado. Everybody had some government land, the government had given them, but nobody really had anything fenced. So your livestock, if you didn't have a way to keep them in, they were going to bother all the neighbors. And I can't tell you how many times I was with Daddy, and she probably was too, cutting her stallions out of our mares and taking them all the way over here where she lived, But they would come back. There were no fences back then. So, and then we had some people move in. The Salmons boys came, and I don't know where they came from, but they were sheep people. And everybody at Kim had cattle or horses. These sheep men are moving in, So we went through all of that hassle back then. But I think they all became neighbors and made the fences finally, and he got his sheep fenced in. But we have a lot of history in this area. And, I can remember the town being pretty hardy little town. It had a bank, it had a newspaper office, it had a car dealership, it had a barber shop, 3 restaurants, 3 pool halls, a jail even a jail, and a sheriff.
Newspaper.
I said the newspaper.
Said the newspaper.
Yeah, I said the Kim newspaper. It just was a pretty rolling little place to live. And most of us milked cows and sold cream. And a truck came out of Trinidad every Saturday to pick up your cream. And they would bring the last week's check and take it and weigh it. They would weigh it, is how you got paid. And I can't tell you how many years we lived on just cow cream checks, but quite a few. And our mother would she'd go into the store, and they were starting to put prints on chicken feed sacks and flour sacks, and she would pick the prettiest ones that she could find, and that's what she made our clothes. She made our little dresses out of those little flour feed sacks. Yeah. So we just had really some hard years, but I tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think about how poor we were, but how happy we were, how secure we were. Never remember being hungry or cold, and had such good parents. I wish every child in America could have parents like we had.
Beautiful.
So, and I grew to be a teenager, and like Lee, both of us married high school sweethearts, and so I've lived all over the state of Colorado. My husband became a civil engineer, so they sent us all over the place, but Kim has always been home. This is where we've spent most of our time. And my children, I've got one of them here. She's over there with the camera. We have 3, and they were raised here. And so they were also raised here at Kim. So we will always have a soft spot in our heart for Kim. And I'll never forget how thrilled we were. It was my father-in-law that became county commissioner and got this pavement to La Junta for us. We just fought mud and couldn't get to doctors a lot of the time when we needed to. And so when he became county commissioner, that was one of the first things he did, was got the roads paved from Kim to La Junta for us. So
That was really a big thing for the Kim people.
Oh, really?
When we finally when they got it from Kim to Trinidad, that was really great.
Yeah, we really moved up in the world.
Yeah.
So for Marion, Lee, and Patsy, I'm curious if you could pass down something you learned when you were growing up here in Kim to the next generation, what would it be?
What was the question? What did you learn?
What would you pass down to the next generation? What did you learn?
I would pass down, I think, the love and security that we found not just with our immediate family, but with all of our friends and neighbors. There's a lot of love in these smaller communities that people in cities don't get to experience. We're like a family in these small communities. And I've been gone a long time now, but this is still my family. These Kim people are my family.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Do you want to say?
I just learned to do what it takes.
To survive.
Whatever the problem is, put my foot on the floor and go for it.
Yeah. Just go for it. Try it out.
I'll be a little bit not so serious. Where we lived out in our area, we had bad water, and most of you probably here know about bad water. It was either you didn't have very much water, and it was usually red. And so somebody asked me one time when I married Jim and moved to Springfield, "Oh, I bet you miss the country, don't you?" I said, "No, I do not. When I turn that faucet on, I don't have to worry about the water at all." I enjoy having water.
Yeah, something
Water
you're
was-
grateful for.
Yes, water was a big problem, and I think it still is in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. What other stories? We have time for maybe a couple more stories to share.
Do you guys want to talk about Ruth Brown?
We might step
It seems like most
I
people
might
want
tell
you
a story
to.
about
Okay.
my brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Patsy.
When like he was telling you about when my grandfather passed away, she buried him by Joycoy, and that's over there. It's west of Pritchett, just a little ways. Why there? But it was kind of out in the country. Well, after the Dust Bowl days, she felt terrible him being out there, so she wanted him moved to Springfield. And my brother and
Your
I
dad?
think and my daddy and some of the men went over, dug his body up, and I think the box was partly fell open, I think, or something. All he could see was just some hair and some teeth and things. But they moved him to Springfield, and that was.
My dad said that when they got him when they lifted the box, it was rotted, and so when they put it up in the pickup, the end of the casket popped open, and his skull fell out on the ground.
Oh, my goodness.
But I don't know that. My granddad could tell a story better than anybody I know. And he could cuss. Oh, I'll tell you what. I always told everybody he was bilingual. He could talk English and cuss at the same time. Well, I didn't finish earlier, but he was harsh with Patsy and my grandmother in a sense that, but I imagine anybody in this room can relate to the men being aggressive towards the women as a way of, it was just their role and their situation in life. But when it came to us grandkids, we could do no wrong. He was the best granddad to us. I mean, everybody. If there was a kid in this country, during the Depression, he raised horses. And again, no fences. He would brand mares and stallions they would run all over this country. At one time, he had almost 700 head of horses that he ran. And they would sell them for $5 a piece, $10 if they had a halter on them. Just a halter on them, not broke to lead, but a halter on them. And so anyway, they would let those horses run wild. They would bring them all in every year, castrate the stallions, brand everything, let them go back out. The stallions, like she said, would take their band back to where they were comfortable with. And so my granddad then started cutting stallions for unusual color. When I grew up, we had a horse called Two-Tone, and the back half of him was, or the back half was white, wasn't it?
Yeah, red.
The red, and then the front part of him was red, solid, white and red.
Huh.
And so my granddad called him Two-Tone, and he was one we all learned to ride up on. But anyway, if there was a kid in this country that did not have a horse, I don't care where you were, my granddad would give you a horse. Mm-hmm. He thought every child needed to be raised with a horse. Mm-hmm. And he's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good philosophy. Good lesson learned. What other stories? Any other stories? I got one more question, but I want to see if you have stories to share.
I mean, they both got great stories.
I have to say something about Mary, and I bet she doesn't remember. She has went through 2 fires. Mm-hmm. Her home has burned down
And
twice.
then the motorhome burned.
Wow. And then her motorhome.
The home burned
So
twice, and then the motorhome burned.
Yeah. And I remember her telling me one time, each time the one thing I got out with was a sewing machine.
Yeah, a little portable Singer sewing machine. I survived, it survived all those fires. That was what was on right by the kitchen door, because it was portable. I packed it around, you know. And so I just picked it up and took it out as I went out. And boy, we barely got out.
Was that the one to hear Kim?
Yeah, that one exploded, you know.
Oh, that's right, it did.
Yeah, the lightning struck and hit close enough to the propane tank that it burned holes in the tubing that brought the propane under the house. And at 3:30 in the morning, that house exploded.
Wow.
With me and one of the daughters in it. So, yeah. So, anyway.
And then the other one, her daughter sat.
Yeah, the other one,
my
little
cousin.
5-year-old.
She was 5 years old playing with candles, went in the closet, set the clothes on fire, and decided to walk out and shut the door.
Yeah, and try to hide it.
Oh, no. Well, do you still have the sewing machine?
I still have that sewing machine.
There you go.
Yes. I still have it. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, and Mrs. Frost. We forgot to talk about Mrs. Frost walking off the cliff.
That's true.
Let me ask you something. We have a story, or 2 stories. One is that my great uncle was in World War II, and he sent stuff home to her grandmother, my great grandmother, and he sent a Nazi flag. And so he said that he was in Germany and was at Hitler's thing when Hitler died. And so he took this flag, and it's actually a banner, off the wall, and he mailed it to her mother, and he ended up, or she made a quilt out of it. And she put the old batting underneath it because it was a big piece of material. And so anyway, my wife and I, we have it now. My grandmother gave it to me, and we had it appraised, and it was like $5,000 for this quilt. But it was just neat that he sent it and she made a quilt out of it. Second, and I don't know what you want, is that, do you know Lane Frost? Lane Frost is a world champion, everybody here does, was a world champion bull rider, okay?
Oh, cool.
Big time.
Yeah,
did you see the movie 8 Seconds?
No.
Well, girl, you need to get out more often.
I know. Movies are not, every time someone asks me if I saw a movie, my answer is always
No.
usually
Well, anyway, Lane Frost was a world champion bull rider.
Cool.
And so he was raised, his mom and dad were raised here at Kim.
Oh.
Okay? And his grandparents lived they were the closest neighbor to Patsy and my grandparents growing up. But Mrs. Frost, which was Clyde's mother, which is Lane's father, they lived just about a mile away from the Joyces and the great-grandma Joyce, when she went into labor for her next to the youngest child, she was having difficulty. She sent her 16-year-old son to go get Mrs. Frost to help her, bring her back to help her deliver the child in the house. So he went, and the team of horses, on their way back, a blizzard hit in, like you've heard John talk about, and we've all experienced down here. And they couldn't see. They said they couldn't even see the head of the horses. The storm was that bad. And so they decided to let go and let the horses work themselves home. The storm coming from east to west shifted the horses to the west enough that they ended up walking off of a canyon wall. The horses did. It killed Mrs. Frost.
Oh my God.
Okay. And then my great uncle was in cast and in the house for almost 8 months.
Wow.
After that. So which story would you want me to tell?
I just got that one.
Oh, well then, I'm done. Okay. Then just
The
go
quilt
ahead.
one is interesting though. Maybe when we get is the other camera ready?
Yep,
Do we-
everything's rolling.
Oh, great. Okay, we're rolling. Yeah, why don't you tell the one about the quilt, and then we'll have one final question to wrap us up.
Okay.
Who wants to tell the quilt? Yeah, Patsy, go ahead.
You want me to what?
Tell the quilt?
Do you want to tell the quilt story?
You tell the quilt.
Or you want to tell it?
Yeah, you tell the quilt.
Okay, I'll just tell a quick story. My great uncle, his name was Kenneth Levertus, or Levertus Kenneth, depending on when he changed his name, was raised over on the canyons, passed over by where the Yocums, or their homesteads are at. The Frost family, no, the quilt. He went off to World War II and would periodically send things home to his mother, which would be Patsy's grandmother. And so one of the things that he sent home was a Nazi quilt, a wall hanging. I thought for the longest time that it was a flag, but when we had it appraised, they said no, that this was one that would have hung in the hall itself. And so when my great-grandmother got it, she looked at it as a big old piece of material. So she ended up making a blanket, a quilt out of it. And it's on, she has like an old, rough, worn out blanket underneath it. And then she put on some black material on the ends of it to make it extend enough to cover for a bed. And so anyway, when my grandmother, about 10 years before she passed away, she gave it to me as a gift, you know. But I thought that was kind of a neat thing.
Yes, that's a neat thing.
That's really cool.
Really.
All right, our final question. Thank you. This is really special. Also, I can tell your family has a lot of fun. But what would you, if you could thank anyone, who would it be and why? Over the course of your life, if there was someone you could thank, why would you thank them? And we'll have everyone share.
Well, I guess in my immediate family, I would have to thank my mother. She was very blunt. She was a very hard worker, very loyal. I think she set a great example for me compared to where she came from and what she had. She had nothing, and I think she set the best example for me.
Great.
Go ahead.
I can't think of it. She wants me to put who I would thank
Who would you thank? Anyone
in this country.
In your life.
in your life?
In your life.
Yeah.
I would thank my mother and daddy. I think that they probably done more than most parents do to make a family be what a family should be. And I think that it would be my parents. And they raised me in this country. And like I said, I learned to survive whatever. I think I learned all the important things, so I thank my parents.
That's great.
I totally agree with everything she said, and I think I want to thank my grandparents too, because our maternal grandmother had a heart of gold. I always felt like she was an angel on earth. And
Are you talking
we had,
Mary?
We had,
Who are you talking about?
yeah, Grandma Kinslow.
Yes.
And the grandfather, both of our grandfathers died when we were little. They never did see me at all. I think they saw you barely. Grandpa Rose saw her barely before he died.
Lemuel would have seen you for about, yeah.
Anyway, we had this step-granddaddy that our grandmother married, and he was everything that a grandfather could be. So we did have a grandpa after all, and really enjoyed that. And I'm just thankful for the family that God gave me and the things they taught me that I've been able to teach my kids. You know, we pass on, we hope, the good things that we've learned in our life. We hope those are the things that we can pass on to our children. And like I said, now I've got 4 generations. I guess you do too, Lee, 4 generations. So they are passing it down to theirs. So I'm more thankful for the family God has given me, I think, than anything else at this point in my life. But I am thankful for good parents, good grandparents, good community to grow up in, good school. This was just a good way to raise kids, and I think it still is. I see it dying, and that worries me because I think it's so valuable to raise these kids in these kinds of areas. So, did that answer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I have to thank, of course, my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom, my dad, for all teaching me the things. But a big part of what I am is because of this community.
Oh, yes.
Is that I was raised with Hollis and Dola Mitchell that never had children except for me and my sisters. You know, I was raised with the Wagners and with the Yocums and the countless families, the Misers, you name it, the families that were located down in this area. And they gave to us a sense of family, a sense of responsibility, and a pride in who you are and what you've come, and you know how you've worked yourself out. So I think the community, more than the influence that the community has had. I know this is not what you wanted to hear right now, but I think that you want to know this because everybody knows Kit Carson. I'm in the process. I've done 3 books on the Rose, the Lowrys, and the Joyces. If anybody wants to look at them, they're over there. I'm in the process of doing a book on the Wagners because the Wagners' grandfather was a first cousin to my grandmother. Okay, so we are related in that way, and so I'm doing a Wagner, Russell, and now it's a Pankey book. But in that research, one of their uncles married a lady, a Spanish lady, and she was her great aunt. And let me read this to you real quick because she wrote this, and it was in the Lahana newspaper. Murdered Manuelita Lujan, my grandmother, retyped from a newspaper article from the Lahana Tribute about the murder of our grandmother, Manuela, I'm hoping it's in that, Manuela Lujan Richards, by Kit Carson II. December 12, 1891. Murder at 9 Mile. Kit Carson, a son of the famous scout by that name, committed the terrible crime of murder Thursday afternoon at the ranch of William G. Richards, about 20 miles south of here. About 18 months ago, Carson married one of Richard's daughters, and because of his dispatching habits, the husband and wife did not live very happily together. A few weeks ago, Carson proposed moving his home to New Mexico, which did not meet with the approval of his wife's parents, as they desired their daughter to remain near them. Carson left the ranch at the time. His wife refused to go south with him, and since then has returned once or twice to prevail upon her to change her mind, but without success. For the past week, Carson has been in La Junta. He left here about 9 o'clock on the morning of the tragedy and rode directly to the ranch, arriving there shortly after 1 o'clock. He rode into the front yard without being noticed by Richards, who was preparing to haul a barrel of water, or by his wife, who was washing clothes by the side of the house. Riding this horse to within a few feet of Richards, he called out to the old man, saying, "Hello, you gray-haired blankety blank. You are the one that has caused all this trouble." Richard immediately gave Carson the lie, whereupon the latter pulled his pistol and fired at Richards, but missed his mark. Mrs. Richards then picked up an axe and ran to the defense of her husband. She struck at Carson, but the horse dodged, and the blow of the axe inflicted a severe injury on the animal's neck. Carson fired a second time, and the woman was killed instantly, the ball entering the center of the forehead and passing through the brain. Richards, in the meantime, ran to the house, and Carson fired a third time with telling effects. The bullet passed through the lower part of Richards' left hip and right thigh, and he fell at the threshold of his door. Carson then rode away in a southerly direction, and it is supported that he had gone to the Mustang Creek. The Mustang Creek is the one that runs by my family's house. This happened up by where the Smarts lived, in that area. Anyway, so where he had a brother living. A posse was organized and started in pursuit, but it was confidently asserted by knowing ones that Carson will not be captured alive. Word was sent to Los Angeles by telephone, and Dr. Dowell of this place was telegraphed to go to 9 Mile at once to attend Mr. Richards' injuries. The murdered woman was the mother of 11 children, 6 of whom are at home. Uncle Billy, as Mr. Richard was familiarly called, is between 60 and 70 years of age and has lived on the frontier since sometime in the 50s, the 1850s, and is respected by all who know him. There seems to have been no occasion for Carson using extreme measures, as Richard is an old man, badly crippled with rheumatism and physically no match for Carson, who is about 30 years of age and in robust health. Carson is said to have been under the influence of liquor at the time of the shooting. December 19th, 1891, Nalmont is greatly grieving over the terrible murder of Mrs. Richards and the wounding of Mr. Richards. Good story, huh?
Very interesting.
Yeah. He actually was, ended up, on the back it says, the preliminary charge of murder was held at a later place Monday and resulted in the justice remanding him to jail to wait the action of the March term in the district court in Bent County. He was returned to Trinidad Jail for safekeeping under the order of the district judge, Gunner. December 3rd, 1891, the second trial of Mr. Carson Jr. at Los Angeles resulted in the jury finding a verdict of guilty on the charge of assault with intent to murder.
Well, thank you. Thanks to your family for sharing your story. It's really special to have multiple generations and multiple sides of the family here. So a huge thank you. Round of applause.
Thank you.
I do want to sing Mary and happy birthday.
Oh, yes.
It's her birthday on Tuesday, so let's do a quick happy birthday song, and then we're going to take a break. All right. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Marianne. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. So we have our third and final group, which I've heard, I'm going to hear a lot of stories from this duo here, which I'm excited about. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Tell us who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your background, and then I'll ask some questions. So you know how it goes by now.
Take off.
My name is Robert Patterson. I originally came over from Baca County, but I've been here since 1967 in Kim. And I lived on a county line, so I was in Kim about as much as I was over in Baca County. And my wife came from Red Feather Lakes. It was just a little ways from the Laramie line. And I found her and I brought her all the way across the state, and we're just a little ways from the Oklahoma, New Mexico line.
Love it. And you're out here in Kim.
And then we're Kim, and she's been a teacher she taught here 42 years at Kim. And so I could ranch here. That kept us going.
Very cool. Great.
Okay, I'm Kent Wagner, and I live 35 miles northeast of Kim on the Plug Hat Ranch. We've been there since 1982. And me and my wife, I was from Lahaina, she was from Straw. We met at a kids' rodeo, and we've been together for 60 years. And I always wanted to come to the Kim country. We had relatives down here. We'd come and visit, and I thought, I'm going to go to Kim and buy me a ranch someday. And so I got a chance in '69 to go work for the Whitaker Ranch, and then I went to work for the Burson Ranch, and then we moved to the Plug Hat Ranch, and I became a brand inspector, and I did that for 22 years. And I retired, and we ended up, well, I'll tell you the rest of the story later, but anyway, we're really from the valley, but we're Kim people now. We've been down there since '69.
Great. Kim people, I love it. What traditions have both of you experienced over time that you want to make sure stick around here in Kim?
Well, my deal is I just love it, and I guess I should retire. I'm one of the older ones now down here. There's a few still past my age, but I'm getting on up in there. And but ranching gets kind of hard, and I've got some kids and some grandkids that help me run the ranch. And I guess one of the main things that happened, John Maroney, I don't know if he's still here or not, he told about the '73 snowstorm. Well, they brought helos in to drop hay to the cattle that couldn't get hay. And I don't know, I wish I could remember the guy that they started to take up, and he got sick in the helo, and they landed right quick. And I don't know who it was that told him to go down and get Bob Patterson. He's an ex-Navy guy that flew helos in the Navy. And in fact, he flew them. I was a crewman, but it didn't bother me to fly in them. And they went down and came down and got me, and we were just getting ready to take the horses and go try to feed some cows. And they stopped and said, we need you to go with us to show us different places that the cattle are and where to go to get feed to them. And I didn't have time to go down and tell my wife that I was leaving. I think my youngest daughter realized I was leaving, and they was trying to saddle a horse, and that helo took off, and she ran off and went through the fence, and ripped a shoulder and across her chest and her shoulder. And that horse belonged to Patsy Lowry before we had bought her. And my youngest daughter's sheep tried to jump the fence and broke his back leg, and they couldn't find a stick to put on the leg to make it straight. Finally, they found a little twig and wrapped it around there. And that sheep went to the county fair and was sold. And RC and my wife and my daughters sewed that horse up. And I don't think a veterinarian could have done any better job than they did. But if I'd have known all that had happened, I probably wouldn't have came home that night, because I think it was just a little hot around there. But I flew all over down there and kicked out hay. And of course, they said, no, be careful where you step back there. There's been an accident. And I thought, accident? Yeah, one guy that went up with him, he didn't last, his dinner didn't last long. And so anyway, but I flew around there and dropped hay and took different places where they could drop hay the next day. And then we ran the store down here in Kim, and the guy walked in one day and he said, you probably don't remember me. And I said, no, I don't remember you. I said, you don't look familiar at all. Of course, he had his hood on and his glasses and his uniform because he's a pilot. And he said, I'm the one that flew you all over the country down here.
Wow.
And he was down from Boise City or south of Boise City, almost into Texas Panhandle. And we sat there and visited quite a while, and for several years we always got a Christmas card from him. He really thought I did all right, didn't get him lost. And so that was the main thing on the snow of '73, and it was bad. So
that's a great story. Sounds like a lot of events happened in that one 24-hour period.
Right.
For your family.
And I did get supper that night.
Okay, my family dates back to the early 1900s on both sides of the family, on the mother's and father's side. And here's a picture of my mother in 1921 at their homestead in Andrews, Colorado. She was 3 years old.
Show the camera there. Perfect.
And then my dad's side of the family, they homesteaded over on Brown Prairie. And when they go to town, it'd take them 2 days to go to town. They would drive to Higbee, and there was a big hole in the rock there. They called it Camper's Kitchen. And everybody that would go to Lahana, they would spend the night at Camper's Kitchen, then they'd go on to Lahana, then they'd come back, spend the night at Camper's Kitchen, and go on home. It took them 4 days to go to Lahana and back and get their supplies. That was back in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And but anyway, when they left out of my grandma and grandpa Mahoney, they moved to Lahana, started a dairy. My grandpa Wagner, he moved to Swink, bought a farm. They held him out 2 years in a row, so he sold out and went to Mancus, and that's where he spent the rest of his life. And all these kids, but my dad followed him to the mountains, and they're the only ones that stayed over here. I don't know if it's the dumb ones or what.
Or smart.
But anyway, that our history goes back plumb to the homestead days.
Wow.
And right now we live on the Plug Hat Ranch, which is 35 miles northeast of Kim, right there on the county line. And we've been there since 1982. And we end up buying the Ned Burson Ranch for Kevin in '87. And that ranch is the old Jimmy Murray Ranch. And he settled that in 1894. He was a sheep man from Scotland. And then he died in '29, and his boy took over until '46, and then his son-in-law and his daughter married there and moved there in 1946. They sold that ranch to Bland Burson in 1964. And then we moved to that ranch in '73 to '82, and then we ended up buying it in '87 from Ned Burson. And the ranch we live on now is called the Plug Hat Ranch. And it was owned by the Allens. They all live in Sorrel, but that was their homestead. I don't know if anybody knows Johnny Allen, but he was born in that house where we live in 1930. And we had that house redone 2 or 3 years ago, and I always thought it was a rock house. And it's an adobe house. I did not realize that. It's the only adobe house I know of in this whole country. Wow. And I was asking Johnny one day about it, and he said, his dad and his dad's brother built that house. And so it's unique. It's the only adobe house I know of. Everybody else built out of rock. And and we bought, to add on our Plug Hat Ranch, we bought the Tally Ranch in '96. And that's where the Smith kids was raised, Flo and her 2 brothers, Jesse and Oscar. And Flo told me they lived there from 45 to 52, and then they sold out and went to Higbee because the mother was going to have to move to Kim for the kids to go to school because Oscar was going to become a freshman, and there was no school bus to come and get him. So they sold that ranch to Charles Talley, and that's the one we bought it from. And Jesse come out one day and brought his grandson. They wanted to tour the ranch, and we went all over the ranch. Them kids had to walk 2 miles up this canyon to the Sunnyside School. And Jesse is telling me about them boys when they go to school in the morning. In the winter, they'd set traps. And I said, what did you catch most of them? He said, skunks. And I said, my gosh, I bet your teacher was proud of you when you got to school. But that's kind of the history of the ranches that we got.
Okay.
Kind of following after him there, we, on our ranches, my folks was over on the county line, and we bought this ranch down here. The guy that owned it at the time had bought a lot of hay from my dad, and he'd never only paid for one load of it, and he went up to buy it. He was going to auction it off, and they stopped by and wanted me to go. I was there at the farm where I was raised. My wife and I and the three kids, I guess then. And one of them was sick. I said, I better stay here in case you need to go to the doctor or something. And they went on, and as they went on out the door, I told my wife, I said, they'll buy that ranch. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. They ain't gonna buy that ranch. And when they got back, Mom walked in that back door, and she had that smirk on her face, and I said, you bought that ranch, did you? Yep. And that's how we ended up down there in 1967, and that, is Tina still here? No, she's gone. She left. Anyway, where we're at is the old Like homestead, and they came in from Arkansas, I believe it was, on a train with, I forget how many boxcars loaded of pigs, but they drove those pigs from Rocky Ford down to this ranch, and they ran pigs and horses. And I don't know whatever happened. I never did get the story on what happened to the pigs, but they had a lot of horses, and they ran horses, and that was the old Like homestead. And then the house that we lived in was built, they lived in a log cabin, and Tommy told me that Alex remembered seeing Indians look in the windows of that old log house where they sat. And there's we have what we call an Alroos Canyon, and it had water and a lot of fruit and stuff in it, and the Indians of all tribes would come down there, and they'd winter down there. They'd fight all summer, but they'd come down there in the winter, and they'd winter there and make arrowheads. And that lady had all those arrowheads. There's still a lot of arrowheads down there where they made those arrowheads in that canyon.
Well, I was going to tell you a little history about our ranch, especially the one that we bought, we called the Tally Place, where the Smiths lived. There's a lot of unique things on it. There's big rock outcroppings. I call them toadstools, but they're really neat. And then down in the canyon, there's a cave called Andy's Cave. Andy Shannon lived there. He just boarded the front of the cave up, and that's where he lived. He's the only smart one I know of, because you look at them old homesteads, you thought, my gosh, the work they put in, and all he did is just have to board his cave up. And it was cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It ain't like these old houses. And I look at these old rock houses, we got several of them on our ranch, and look at them, and I thought, man, them people have got to be the toughest people I ever knew in my life. To build them houses and then live in them as many years as they did, with no electricity, and there was, most of them was 40, 50 miles from town. I mean, it wasn't like he's going to go to town in an hour, he was going to go in 2 days at the earliest. So, I mean, our country's got a lot of history to it, and we've got teepee rings and things like that, that most people's never seen. Right. And it's just pretty unique country.
That's great.
That, speaking of old houses, we had one house, it's getting pretty well fallen down, but Ernest Mays told me, this is where I got a lot of my stories. And he said the people who lived there, they built one house, one room, and they had a adobe fireplace in the corner, and they hung cowhide on the inside and on the outside, and that's what the doors were. And they go around and they go in this other one to the bedrooms. And they were the same way, had these two cowhides hanging on these doors, and they'd go in and out. And for a long year, while after we got there, the doors were still up. You kind of see the nails and stuff where they had those deals done. So, and we had bought the Perky place. He had the ranch that's close to us, and he still was running on it, and he came down and he said, "There's a plane on your land, on that James's land over there." So I crawled up on this windmill, looked over there, and there was a great big old tail sticking up. And I said, "Well, I don't know, but we hear planes go over." And my wife was coming home about 2 days ago, or 2 days before that, from school, and she said, "Man, there was a plane went over low." And I said, "Yeah, I heard it. I was up on the mesa riding." And it was been real foggy for about 2 days. And we got the sheriff came down, which was, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, it was here at Kim, and he said he was, of course, turned it into up there. But we went over and looked at it, and they'd been bringing in a lot of marijuana from down in the lower South America. And they didn't, that strip of that mesa was just as smooth as this tabletop. No rocks, no nothing. They could land that big plane there. But when they went, they didn't realize there was that much bud, and they turned it around. It was a tricycle plane that the front end and that front wheel turned crossways this way, and they couldn't get out of there, and they just walked off and left that plane sitting there. And finally somebody came and they got a pilot to come fly it off after it dried up. And about 6 months or 8 months later, somebody was talking to me, and they said, "Yeah, that was the same pilot that flew it in there." And but we went over there and all of us crawled up in it and looked at it. And I walked out there and I said, "Well, that's not the first time that plane's been here. Look at those tracks." And my son, every now and then in his bedroom, he'd look out the west window and he'd see lights. And I think they came in a lot at night and land there and then get gone. But he said, I saw those lights, Dad. I know it was something like that. I always just, it's just a star you're seeing, you know. And, but after I seen that plane, I believed him. It was an R-4D plane. In the Navy, I've flown in them. And so that's a story that's kind of good or bad, whatever you want to call it.
Go ahead.
Going back to what Tanky was asking about, that Dale Rose was the post office there, and there was up on the mesa, heading south toward where Mayfields lived, was a Doc Woods hospital, and then these two guys, Simpsons, I think that's right, that was their name, I think. Two men and two boys, and they wanted to stay all night with them, and they went up there, and about before they got to the top, it went to blowing snow. Well, it got so bad that they was in an old car, and the car died or something. I never quite understand what happened. And they just going to walk because they knew right where the camp was, they thought, but it was just like somebody said they couldn't see the ears on the horse when they was riding. And it was just about like that, and they just kept walking, and they walked within, somebody said the tracks looked about 40 feet from the tent and their camp, and they walked right on over and walked off that cliff, and then they found them, the little boys, they were all dead. They froze to death in the trees. over on the west, on the south side of Mesa de Mayo, on where it dropped off into Cimarron Canyon. And they said the little boys had tears in their eyes, and it was froze in there when they found them. And they weren't too far from Doc Woods' hospital either, but they was blowing such a hard snow, and they couldn't see, and they just went off. If they'd had a horse, the horse probably would have taken them to the tent, but they was in that old car and they quit them.
Oh, that's
But that
sad.
Doc Woods was several people from Plum Valley back in there went up there to get him to do things, flues and appendix and something. And Ernest was laughing one time and said they found out finally he wasn't a doctor, he was a veterinarian. But he took care of everybody. So that's some of the history of that country down there. There's a lot of stories down there. Orville Perky found a stop and was sitting there eating lunch, and he looked down a crack on a canyon there, down in there, and he kept looking and said, well, that looks like a blanket. Somebody must have lost a blanket. Well, when they unrolled it, there was a man in that blanket. They never did find out who it was.
Never did.
Wow.
So,
What would you say are some ways that you've seen this area change, and what stayed the same?
What's that?
What's changed
Oh,
around
changed.
here, and what stayed the same?
Okay. One thing I want to tell you about that school where the Smith kids live, I was wondering how they got drinking water. And they dug a cistern on the south end of it. They had rain gutters all the way around it. It went into this deal where it had sand and charcoal, filtered it, and then went into that cistern. I've never seen any of these other schools that way. And it's still there. It's just like it was the day they left it. And then something else I want to show you, this bridle here. This bridle was Bernus Harding's, and Kevin's got it now. And the story on this bridle is Bernus he gave that bridle to Vic Malinsky when he moved from the ranch to Rocky Ford. He lived next to Vic Malinsky. And he said that the bridle was made by a member of the Dalton gang, because Bernus would harbor them when they'd come through the country. He'd let them live with him. And one day they come into the camp and screaming and hollering, and they spooked old Bernus's horse, and he broke his bridle in his headstall. And it wasn't long that one man come back with a brand new bridle and headstall, and this is it. That was a gift to Bernus Harding by the Dalton gang. And it's got his brand on the side of it. And Kevin says, I know these are Bernus's brands because I've looked it up. His brands are in them rock buildings that we got at the ranch. And he said both them brands are in that rock building, so I know them are Bernus's brands. So this is supposed to be a true story. Here's the deal on it right here.
Yeah. That is neat.
Speaking about rock buildings and everything, our house that we live in right now, rock, and every wall at one time was a outside wall. And back there on the back side of it, there's a mark in paint that's been there since we was there. It was built in 1915, the first building of it. So our house is over 100 years old. So, and us and the mice and everything else get on fine in there. The walls are about that thick. We get along good. So, I sure, Kim is home. So and we both love it. She came from up at Red Feather Lakes, which is 8,000 feet of Red Feather Lakes, where she was raised. Her dad was a coal miner, when I first met her, she was telling me she's a coal miner, and I thought, man, I got it made. If I can just nail this little gal, I'll be all right. She'll be able to sing all those songs like Retta Lynn. And we got home, and I found out she couldn't carry a tune in a bushel basket. But anyway, we've been married. Got married in 1958, been married 67 years. And we've been down there at Kim, down there since 1967. You mathematicians can figure that out. So, but the people around here at Kim, I wouldn't trade them for anything. They're all neighbors.
That's special. What have you learned that you want to pass down to the next generation?
Do what now?
What have you learned that you want to pass down to the next generation?
Oh, well, on ranching.
Anything.
Well, I just learned that if you're going to be a rancher, you've got to work hard, and you've got to do it continuous. There's no time off. You don't get them cows. Got to be fed, especially in the winter. In the summer you can get a little time off, but most of the time you got to be there to take care of them cows. That's the main thing. And I love it. I mean, I've done it forever, and I wouldn't quit for nothing. I'm 82 years old, and I still work every day just like I was 60, just like he does.
Yeah, the same. I feel just like Kent does. It makes you feel good when you get up in the morning. And somebody said, well, how far do you have to go to work? I said, about 2 steps. Walk out the door, you're at work. And you take care of stuff. And I've got a good family, and a wife that stayed right with me all the way. She hasn't varied a bit. So, anyway, and then there's son-in-law and daughter, and then of course you probably all realized RC rodeoed for 20 years in PRCA, and now his grandson's going it, and their daughter's roping and everything. So they're doing. All of them have rodeoed except maybe one. We rodeo a lot, or 2, excuse me. One daughter lives in Pueblo with her husband, and they're good. So I wouldn't trade it. There's been ups and downs, but it seems like the ups are always better than the downs.
Sounds like you're passing it down to the next generation too.
Probably quicker than I want to.
And that's something we are involved in, is rodeoing. My wife, she rodeoed. She was an all-around cowgirl, and she was a teenager. And then all our boys rodeoed, then our granddaughters rodeoed, and now we've got my granddaughter's husband, Riley Pruitt's professional calf roper. I think he's 3rd in the world right now. And that's about all we do is follow rodeos. That's their main goal.
That's awesome.
Watch these kids.
Yeah.
Now we got some little bitty great-grandkids that they're wanting to rodeo, and I hope we're still around so we can watch them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very cool.
But that's it. To me, that's the most important thing, is watching these kids and these grandkids. And I love a rodeo. I mean, we were raised up rodeoing, and I guess we'll do it the rest of our lives.
If you could thank anyone, final question, if you could thank anyone throughout your whole life, who would it be and why?
Who would I thank?
Who would you thank?
My wife.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Why? Well, she keeps me lined out.
What about you?
Well, I'll have to agree with Kent. My wife and my family, kids, I get in a jam, well, there's usually one of them right there at the door ready to help me or do whatever. And she keeps things kind of going, and we just have fun. Like Kent said, we watch rodeos. That's about all we watch. And That's where we, as our entertainment. And I love meeting people, and I met one today that I've known for, of course, you went to school where he was at, Rick Jones there, and his dad, I know his dad real well, and sister, and people like that you just run across, and I enjoy that. And we do.
Love it.
So, I want to thank, where's Tony, for getting this together.
All the way back there.
I think it's really good, him and...
And I want to thank Tony for all he's done for this.
Yeah.
And you.
I am so appreciative of you all because you have really made these conversations come to life and really sharing your stories. And so we're just super, super grateful for that and for everyone who's shared today. And a round of applause for all of our speakers. Just a big thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, we're gonna make this available for everyone to access, to have these stories and this information for you to share with your families. And so I just wanna encourage you all to continue to talk about these stories with your families, right? So to pass down these lessons to the next generation, it's really important, and this history is really crucial. I wish I would have captured some of the things from my grandmother. And so I love what you're doing, and I think it's really beautiful. And so thank you for being here and being honest. And I think that's all I have to say. Margie, I don't know if you have any final words, or Tony, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the group?
Thanks for coming, and I got to say, RC and John and Ken, they worked awful hard to get everybody here, and I really appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah, thank you to everyone who made it happen. And there is so much food, so do please take some. Thank you all.